Welcome to Mom and Mind, a podcast about maternal mental health from conception to pregnancy and postpartum. Real stories from moms and family members who have made it from struggling to wellness, and interviews with experts and advocates who work for moms and families to get the help they need. We discuss very real struggles that can sometimes be hard to hear, but these are stories that need to be told so that moms and families can know that healing is possible. This podcast is meant to offer information and awareness and is not a replacement for treatment by a professional. Thank you for being with us today. Welcome back to Mom and Mind. I'm your host, Dr. Kat. In this episode, we're talking with NaKaisha Tolbert-banks. She is sharing some of her personal story and journey through PPD and how she got through it, as well as her professional role as a clinical social worker, among many other things, and how she helps people get through perinatal mood disorders. NaKaisha is a licensed clinical social worker and licensed clinical addictions counselor. She's a certified laughter yoga leader as well as a certified empowerment coach. NaKaisha serves as adjunct faculty for the University of Cincinnati and has previously been adjunct faculty for Indiana University School of Social Work. NaKaisha believes there is no health without mental health and translates this belief into her practice, D.U.O Empowerment Services. She provides professional counseling and life coaching services and educates the community through various speaking opportunities on various aspects of mental health and wellness. In her spare time, NaKaisha enjoys spending quality time with friends and family, cooking, baking, and traveling. NaKaisha enjoys laughing with her husband and 2 young daughters, as it is an important part of her everyday life, because laughter to her gives life meaning. Welcome, NaKaisha. Thanks so much for being with us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dr. Kat. Excited to be here.
I'm super excited to talk to you. You do so many really cool things in your work. And I found out about you and kind of met you through the maternal mental health world. And like so many of us who are in this specialty, we all have our own stories of how we got into it and what we went through to get here. So maybe we can start there with you. What went on for you and how did you get into this work?
Sure. So my journey began in 2010. We actually found out that we were expecting actually what would have been our second child. I had a previous loss the year prior. And so we found out that we were expecting. And obviously, as soon as we found out that we were expecting, I think that's kind of when the anxiety began.
Sure.
Obviously with the loss, and then you find out that you're expecting again. And I'm sure that there are so many moms that, can relate to this. The anxiety kind of comes in, and every single day and every single week, it's like, okay, I've made it another day, I've made it another week. And that countdown just continues basically for me until I saw that little face after our first daughter was actually born. Which for me, that process of being pregnant had its ebbs and flows. And the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs were just being sick kind of ongoing for quite a few months into the pregnancy. And, normally the docs were like, well, you shouldn't still be nauseous and, the vomiting and things like that. And it kept going and going and going. We're at, 20 weeks and 22 weeks and it was still going. And then magically at about 8 months, I was no longer sick when it was almost time for me to deliver. So you could imagine that was pretty draining at that point.
Oh, yeah.
But then going into, getting prepped for the delivery, like my actual water broke, started having contractions and things like that. And, my husband and I were very excited, like, wow, this is really going to happen, Long story short, it became, you haven't really dilated, but we'll just kind of keep going and seeing how things go. And my water had broken like at 7 a.m. And then by, 1 p.m, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it just became this, okay, you're not dilating. We need to come up with a plan B. What I do remember was telling the nurse at one point that I didn't feel well. And pretty much when I kind of remember coming to a little bit, I felt wind on my face, and that was me being wheeled down the hall into emergency surgery for an emergency C-section. And then at that point, it was pretty much me out. I was snoring on the delivery table. And kind of when I came to, there was my daughter. And then from the emergency C-section, she went to NICU because of low blood sugar. And so again, for many moms that are out there, when you go from one situation to the next, and obviously going from, oh, this healthy baby to NICU, it becomes something else. And
that
for
all happens
me,
very fast.
Yes. Yeah. And for me, the narcotics don't mix well with me. And so I was just extremely tired and kind of groggy. And it was just really hard to connect with everything that was going on. So emotionally, I was running really, really high. So things ended up starting to turn a corner and they got better. We were there for a week with our daughter and then we were able to go home. But it was after that, from, her pediatrician to this specialist for this and a specialist for this and all of these different things. My husband having to go back to work because the time that he had taken off was basically spent the first week with NICU and then the second week with doctor's appointments and things like that. And I can just remember automatically feeling like, oh, this loneliness of what am I supposed to do with a new baby? And I don't feel well in these appointments and all of these things going on. And the depression set in and it was just pretty much downhill from there.
Right. So this is just like, intense day after day for a couple of weeks, let alone you just come off of an exhausting pregnancy and really difficult delivery, to say the least.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. So, I mean, as any mom who's experienced any part of what you've experienced can say is like, yes, this is hard and this is very stressful. And it's so much exhaustion if you're already going into motherhood feeling tired.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden having to figure out all of this stuff by yourself.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know that for many moms and even for myself at that point, the saving grace for me, because I am a social worker, I knew a lot about postpartum and perinatal mood disorders to the extent that I had shared with my husband, if you notice that things aren't right with me, or if you hear me saying these things, or if you see me not necessarily being myself, like call the doctor and get me in, if I'm not able to do that for myself. And I remember saying to him one day, this was, I don't know, maybe 3-4 months after our daughter was born and things were kind of starting to get back to normal for us in a sense. I remember just saying, something's still not right. I don't feel like myself. Like I don't feel like I know this me, And so that's what we did. I went to my physician and she dealt with many moms and different things like that. And so, we sat and we talked and we came up with a plan. And it was at that point that, it took months before I really started feeling like I had a grasp and I felt the old me kind of coming back. And by the old me, I just mean that person that had things together and could handle, stressors and different things like that normally.
Right.
But for a while, it was a real struggle to just even get up every day and do what it was that I needed to do to take care of myself and my child.
Wow. So it sounds like on some level you had some of your own awareness about what to look for and what to keep an eye on. You educated your husband. You found a provider who kind of knew what to do or didn't know what to do. On that level, you had several things working with you and for you.
Yeah.
As you know, in your work and in mine, that doesn't always happen.
Right.
And that can be pretty stressful for moms who don't have providers who understand what's going on.
Absolutely.
But even with that, right, so you have some support, but it's still hard. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah, I think the thing for me is that, and the thing that I'm sure that you educate on is no woman is extinct, It doesn't just, hit people that wear purple shirts or, love roses and, sunshine and rainbows or things like that. This can be the story for any woman that becomes pregnant and goes through this, this particular process. And so for me, obviously, it was a tough time in my life, but I'm thankful, and I tell people that I'm a survivor, that I actually was able to work through it and overcome it. And now I'm able to share on that other level now.
Yeah.
When I work with moms, like I'm not just speaking from textbook or
Right.
from someone else's story. Like, this is my story because I actually went through it and I know what helped me. And so let's come together and work to find a plan that actually works for you.
Right. And did that bring you to specializing a little more specifically in maternal mental health?
It definitely did. I think it put me more in a position to understand from a different perspective what is helpful and needed with the moms that I work with. And so obviously now being in private practice, when I have women that are pregnant and they come to me just saying, oh, well, I'm expecting my first child, or this is the farthest that I've gotten because I've had previous losses.
Right.
Now I know from a different level, like, what do you need to ensure, number one, your sanity,
Right. Yeah.
because it's like, the mind is amazing in what it can do, sometimes to work against us,
Right.
but we need it to work for us, right?
Yeah.
So that part definitely comes into play. It's just kind of like, all right, let's come up with a plan, and just know that this plan may have to be altered based on what goes on.
Right.
But I have a greater awareness because of my now experience to be able to help moms in a different way and in a different level. And obviously with the compassion that they need through such an intricate moment of their life.
That's such a beautiful way to put it. It's so true. It is hard. Unless you've been there, you don't really get it.
Yeah,
there's things you can learn from a book, and that's fine. And, from documentaries or other stories, and that's great. And we need those advocates too. And, you don't have to have gone through something in order to help somebody else. But there is sort of like this unique connection that happens when you're like, yeah, I get it. I really get it. And that in and of itself can be helpful and healing.
Definitely. I definitely agree.
So in the work that you're doing now, you have so many different degrees and things that you've learned how to do in your work. How do you help moms through this with all of the training that you've had? And specifically, too, and the things that are maybe new to some of the listeners is certified laughter yoga leader and empowerment coaching and using laughter as a way to help moms.
Definitely. So to kind of give a little background, one of the other, or I guess two of the other certifications that we just kind of briefly talked about is that I'm a certified laughter yoga leader, and the other is a certified empowerment coach. And so around these parts where I'm currently resigning and I practice, a lot of people know me as the laughter coach or the laughing lady or the lady that laughs or whatever. They always connect me with laughter, which I think is really awesome.
It's totally awesome.
Yeah. So this laughter piece, it's funny that when I get clients that actually call, they're like, well, I saw this on your profile, or I read this online about you. Like, do you tell jokes, or, like, what do you do? And, I always tell people, no, there will be no joke telling of any sort because I am the worst joke teller ever.
No.
I either laugh before the punchline or I screw it up and it's only funny to me and not anybody else. So. But the laughter piece for me actually comes into play with the capacity that it is just organic. So, for instance, when I'm working with a mom and, she comes in and she's just like, this whole pregnancy thing is new to me and I've got a lot of anxiety around it, or, I've had a previous loss. And so, I'm kind of not sure of what to do or how I should think or how I should feel. And, there are certain things that come up that I may chuckle about. And I always ask for forgiveness and say, I don't mean to laugh and I'm not poking fun, but that kind of made me snicker a little bit. And I'll say, here's why. And they'll say, oh my gosh, I never even thought about that. And then we kind of laugh about it. Or they may come in and say, do you remember when we were meeting in session last week and we were talking about X, Y, and Z? Well, that happened and I just burst into laughter and I thought about you, and
That's
so
great.
it's really neat because it's like, it's not this forced thing that has to happen in order for us to use laughter in session, but it's what comes up organically. And we utilize that to shift the client's mood into this better space. Obviously, because, a mom that's expecting, there are so many different things that are going on that I'm like, if you can find humor in parts of this pregnancy, then utilize that to propel you forward and keep things going in the right direction, because there are so many negative things or so many unfortunate things that you could focus on. But if you can shift yourself to actually focusing on the good stuff and the positive stuff and the stuff that makes you laugh, then go with it, then go with it. And again, that's not something that I didn't have to do. There were days where, I'd go in for what was supposed to be a 30-minute appointment, and then 4 hours later, I'm coming out like they did this and this and this, and, they thought this, but then this ended up coming about, and, we had to make sense of it all by sometimes just sitting and laughing about it.
Right. That's such a good way to reframe and to put a different parameter around what's going on in someone's life. Because, if they're coming in, they're depressed and anxious, it's not that they're going to be thinking the first thing is laughter in that moment. But it sounds like from what I'm hearing, you're sort of giving them an out by giving them an option to find the thing that's interesting or ironic or funny in those moments.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, this whole laughter bit, it's free. We don't have to sign up for laughter. We don't have to, go to your neighbor and ask if you can borrow a cup of laughter. It's just that thing that everybody has. We just have to embrace it, And again, I just want to make sure that it's clear that it's not anything that I force with my clients. It's not something that it's not inappropriate or anything like that. We definitely utilize the moments where, maybe my client starts laughing and I'll say, what was so funny about that for you? Share with me. And then they share it with me and then we take moments to laugh about it. And it really does just throw a different perspective and a different light on that particular situation. And, if it's that one thing that made them laugh in the course of the day, well, by golly, George, let's take it and go with it.
Right, especially if most of the day is glum or down or sad, any break in that stream of feeling down is a good break.
Absolutely.
Especially if it's this positive thing. And I just keep thinking laughter is medicine. Laughter is medicine. And that's what you're bringing to people.
Is. Yeah.
Very, very cool. I love this perspective. I feel like as I'm listening to what you do, it sort of brings up, more hopeful feelings. And it's just something to hold on to. Maybe even if it's just for a moment during their day, it can brighten up just that little spot. And that might be what gets them through the day.
Yeah. And I think it's definitely, a piece that many people don't think about as just a way for us to focus on a particular situation differently, even with the husbands, that may come in or their boyfriends or, significant others with these moms, they may come in and they're having a rough time, with just supporting their loved one that's, expecting or, on the flip side, going through postpartum. And so, for me, it's also to help them to find that little glimmer of hope and laughter, because, on that other end, the people that support these moms, it's just as critical for them to understand what's going on and have that support as well. So it really does play a key factor in the work that I do to just help everyone to see that, just that little bit can go a long way.
Absolutely. And these can be very, very stressful situations. It sounds like that's something you work a lot with.
Yeah.
High stress.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, your personal story carried a high level of stress along with that. And just, coming through that and surviving and thriving through that is not easy, to go through quite a lot to get through that. And it sounds like what you're helping your clients to do.
Yeah, and that stress can be very debilitating. I mean, when a person is stressed, it can really affect the way in which you think, and people, I don't think, always recognize that until, like, for me in practice, where I sit down and say, okay, like, what are you stressed about right now? And they'll say, well, I don't really feel like I'm stressed about anything. Then as we start to talk about, well, what did you do during the course of this week?
Mm-hmm.
Or what didn't go right during the course of this week? Or, how have you been feeling? And then as they begin to talk about it, they'll say, I didn't really think that was bothering me until right now, when I actually sat down to think about it and to talk about it.
That's
And
so true.
It's amazing what stress can do. It really can affect the way that you think, the way that you operate, or even your mood. It's just kind of like, well, I didn't get up and do anything for the last 2 days, but it's just because I've been tired.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get dressed. I didn't take a shower. I didn't do my hair. I didn't do anything other than feed the baby or, whatever. And it's just kind of like, okay, so let's talk about this a little bit more and, kind of apply this to what it actually means for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of times with just simply sitting and talking about stressors, whether it's financial or support, because
Right.
it's amazing what lack of support can do for, moms after they've had a baby. Like, that lack of support can be very, it can be a damper,
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
so it's important to really look at those stress levels too and kind of monitor where moms are in that process.
Right. I think depression, I mean, a lot of people often say that they didn't or don't realize they're depressed until they're kind of in it, like that slow boil type of feeling that once you get used to a feeling, like let's say you have a highly stressful environment, or you've been depressed for a long time and it's just kind of what it doesn't maybe necessarily register as stress anymore, but it's still affecting you.
Yeah.
And it sounds like in the work that you're doing, you're really sitting down and kind of breaking that apart and helping people reflect on it and be mindful of like, oh yeah, that thing really does affect me. And then that gives them the opportunity, if they can, to do something different.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm just kind of thinking about some of the moms that I've worked with, and the important piece to that is just the awareness.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of this big shift in movement in a work that a lot of therapists and providers like ourselves, things that we're doing with mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's being mindful in the moment about what's going on, or, in the moments that, something doesn't feel right to you. So I'm just thinking about the moms that I work with, and I'm like, just be mindful of your moods, like during the day and during the weeks. Like, did you have any up moments? If you did, what were those up moments about? What was going on? What happened that week? So that you can use that to kind of be that foundation, so that when you're maybe having a down moment or you're feeling a little bit more stressed or anxious, you can say, okay, I know that these things have happened and have caused me to feel more anxious or more depressed. So what are some things that I need to do to kind of help shift that? Do I need to contact my provider and maybe go in for a recheck? Do I need to call a friend to say, hey, can you meet me out at the park so that, we can go for a walk with the baby? Or is it, hey, I just need somebody to come and sit with the baby for a couple of hours while I sleep?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just those little things. I need to do the laundry. I just need a fresh home. Maybe I need to vacuum, or, whatever it may be. But all of those things, we really don't necessarily think about are things that can stress us or make us feel really sad.
Right.
But in the event that, you have to take a step back and look at that, sometimes those are just those little things that start to add up.
Right. I think especially for new moms, there's so much going on, and sometimes it's hard to even notice what you need until you really slow down and think about it, because there's so much to do and so much to learn and to pay attention to. And, oh yeah, I'm sleep deprived and, all that stuff.
Exactly.
Right. What you were just describing a little bit ago, I was hearing some of the empowerment stuff, just really being able to find out what the mom's strengths are on some level and help them access those. Is that
Definitely.
part of that piece is the empowerment stuff?
Yes. And so the company that I started in 2008 is D.U.O Empowerment Services, and it's D.U.O, and it stands for Do Unto Others. And the empowerment, the M and the E in the ment part of empowerment is actually capitalized, so it spells empower me.
Yes.
And so the basis behind this company and the reason why I started it and I titled it as such is, do unto others. How would I want someone to help me if I needed help?
Right.
And so it's kind of that basis of, if the tables were turned, what would I want on the other side, right?
Yeah.
And so that empower me piece it goes both ways. Like my clients empower me to be a better provider, while I empower them to be the best them that they can be, given the tools that I help them to use or to become more aware of so that they can use in their everyday lives. And that's what the whole empowerment piece is. It's me empowering my clients in areas that they need that help to get better, to just be better in that, and to utilize those skills that they learn down the line for when they run into a particular situation or issue again.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I lived in your area, you would be my therapist. This is awesome. I mean, right? These are life tools, just like in terms of how you even do unto others and how you so thoughtfully put together your business name and it sounds like, I don't know you all that well, but it sounds like your intentions are just like in such a good place for the kind of work that you do and the kind of help that you're giving to your community is awesome.
Yeah, I absolutely, and I tell everybody that I meet, like, this isn't work for me. Like, this is, people would say like a calling sometimes that people have. And I would definitely say it's a calling that I have. But I have known since the first time I actually volunteered, I was 14 years old in my hometown.
Yes.
I knew that I wanted to help people or in some factor. I didn't know what kind of a way, but this for me is just so energetic. Like I get so much energy from meeting with people. I get excited when my clients come. They think that I'm crazy, like when they walk through the door and I stand there and I give these spirit fingers and I'm like, hey, you made it in today. I'm like, oh my gosh, like why are you so happy? Let's go into the office. And then they just laugh because they know that that's just me. And it's one of those things, though, that, if my bright and chipper, spirit-fingered self, is the one thing that's going to make you laugh today, then by golly, George, I'm going to give it to you and let's work, But I absolutely love that I have been blessed with the opportunity to help so many people.
That's awesome. I can tell, from talking to you how much heart you put into your work. And, I don't think anyone could go wrong by coming to see you and getting some help and getting like realigning their tool set and, getting back on the path. It's just the work that you do is super inspiring. I love it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, NaKaisha, I'm so excited to know you. I'm really excited about the work that you do, and I want other people to be able to find you. So how can people find you?
Yes, absolutely. If you would like to go to my website and just kind of learn more about what I'm doing or just grab other information, my web address is www.duogiggles.weebly.com. That's www.duogiggles.weebly.com. Or you can find me on Twitter at First Lady Giggles, or you can find me on Facebook by just entering D.U.O Empowerment Services, and that's D.U.O Empowerment Services. And if you'd like to send an email, feel free. You can email info.duoservices@gmail.com. I am so sorry. But that happens. I got all this stuff floating around in my head. I'm giving out the wrong information. So that's how people can find me.
Awesome. Okay, everyone go find her. And I'm excited to know you and to be in touch with you. And thank you so much for sharing your story today and your path to being a survivor and being an advocate and being a therapist and helping all of these people in your area.
Yes, Dr. Kat, thank you so much. This has been fantastic.
Awesome. By joining us today and listening, you're a part of the growing community of people who are aware and concerned for mothers and families during this beautiful and sometimes very difficult time of life. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review this free podcast so that Mom and Mind can be found by moms, families, and providers who will benefit from hearing our talks. If you or someone you know is having a hard time, help is available. Please look for resources for help at momandmind.com, where you will also find links and information from today's episode. Thank you for listening and being a part of the Mom and Mind community.